Considering the interruption of global supply chain, do you think the Russia-Ukraine war has further accelerated localization of supplies?
That's a very key point. And this does sort of drive further the deglobalization or more localization tendencies of each country. And in the beginning, with regard to neon and the rare gases, this started already a little bit from the Crimea War that happened in 2014 when Russia invaded Crimea, and it caused another problem with regard to rare gases. There are many chip fabricators, at least in the West, that did their best to try to minimize their dependency on Russia and the Ukraine. There's quite a bit of air separation that goes on in the United States, although it's smaller scale. And not the air separation that is done here in the US is done from smaller air separation units. And so they have to collect a lot more of it in order to have a substantial amount that could compare with the source like Russia. With regard to how this would affect more localization, I think it will drive more localization, to be sure, but it's going to take time. I'm trying not to get too political here, but if sanctions are imposed further on their source of energy and gas that feeds the other parts of the world, neon will ultimately also be impacted. And that will drive more localization and perhaps more customers to China.
What are the advantages and disadvantages of a regional supply chain comparing to a global one?
And it really depends on one's perspective. TECHCET, as an international company, we have customers from all over the world, from every chip-making country. We are a pro-globalization kind of company. However, we don't see that trend going in that direction. And perhaps, I'm hoping, just a cyclical thing where people are starting to realize their vulnerabilities, or countries are starting to realize their vulnerabilities and trying to create infrastructure within each country that could be, for example, their material supply chains that would allow them to operate more independently from another country. But at the same time, there are certain minerals, metals that are not easily found or easily processed in other countries. And some countries have more strengths than others. Some countries have more capability than others. So there's always going to be a bit of global dependency, but I think it's going to be less than it has been before, given this general localization trend. Will it be more resilient? It's hard to say. The problem with local supply chains are that the volume opportunity is less than if you're a supplier in one country and can then ship to many countries all over the world. The economies of scale are better in globalization kind of environment. And if you don't have the economies of scale, then things become more expensive to make. Or you have fewer suppliers that you can choose from to make them. So in terms of resilience, I think that there's going to be a learning curve that will happen within each local region where they're going to have to learn how to be resilient and understand how to maintain good profitability without the ability to sell globally in some cases. In other cases, you have your very big chem and gas companies, Air Liquide, Linde, for example. All of these companies have footprints in multiple countries. So they may be able to survive and be more resilient than smaller companies. So we have to wait and see what happens.